again. We're on.
Great, thank you all. So we are back in action here. We concluded our council comments, and we are now ready to turn to our town manager's report. So Ryan Mahoney, you're up, sir.
Okay, a couple of quick updates. First, just wanted to mention, I put it in my Friday report, but we got together last Tuesday, a week ago, today, to do a reseeding project out on some of the flood mitigation control structures that we put into place after the Lake Christine fire. And these ones were the last structures that we built at the last possible days of our grant cycle last year, bumping up against Christmas. And so we went out to finish. The final piece was just reseeding the piles and reseeding the basins themselves. So we actually had a good group of folks, Roaring Fork Outdoor volunteers, helped, led the charge that day, and we got some seed to do that, donated from the co-op down in Carbondale, so much thanks to them, as well as burritos to feed the hungry after a hard day's work from El Carita. So that was a lot of fun and good turnout, and we now have that completed. I think the snow, a little blanket of snow and moisture, was a good thing for it. Tomorrow, we will be filming a community update, so the mayor, as well as the public health directors from both Eagle and Pitkin counties will be talking about the uptick in COVID cases. So we want to provide some messaging to the community about that. That should come out later this week. And then wanted to give a shout out to Boyd and his crew with Public Works. You know, they got their first run at dealing with the snow, and it was a pretty wet and heavy snow. So they wrestled with it, but I think my observations were they did a great job. So just wanted to make sure I recognize them. And a couple other just quick things with regard to any questions that council has forwarded us for the Shelton property. We are working on those answers and intend on providing those back to council. So at the next meeting, we will be discussing providing that information to you. And as far as like some of the documents, like the title policy or the schematics, we're happy to provide those in advance so you can take a look at them. And then, Bill, you had asked about the CAP-K, the minutes and conclusions from that. So that didn't fall off the face of the earth. Believe it or not, we have been working and actually have a draft now of a council guiding principles document that we basically took all those minutes and transferred that into something that we'll have council review. And so we'll be bringing that back to you in the near future here. And I think I'll leave it at that for now, Mayor.
Great, thank you, Ryan. So, any questions for our town manager before we move on? Thank you very much. Our first order of business then is the approval of an intergovernment, going to be resolution number 38 of 2020. It's approving the intergovernmental agreement for the Rudai Water and Power Authority. Jeff Conklin and April Long. Hopefully, there's April. She's on live with us here. So thank you guys, and why don't you fill us in on where we are?
Okay, great. I can get started. Jeff, if you have anything to say, please interrupt me as I go. I am going to try to be relatively quick tonight, so if it's okay with you, Mayor, I'd like to share my screen so that I can show a PowerPoint.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Are you guys seeing a slideshow and no notes?
We're seeing the slideshow. And,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, great. I'm April Long. I am the Executive Director of the Rudeye Water and Power Authority. I wanted to introduce myself. I think that several of you are familiar with the Rudeye Water and Power Authority, but for those of you that aren't, and for the public that may be watching at home, we are an organization, it's a quasi, or it is a governmental organization that I'm going to explain a little bit more, but it's kind of funny because we have no water, no power, no authority, and we're not related to Rudeye. So our name really confuses people, and it takes some explanation, but you'll often hear me refer to it as RWAPA, and some people who are more familiar with it might call it RWAPA, but all the same organization. Our mission is to mobilize resources and influence to benefit the waters and communities of the Roaring Fork watershed. So it's the entire watershed that we're talking about. And while we have no water, no power, and no authority, and we're not strictly related to Rudeye, we were born from those ideas. And so we were formed in the early 1980s to collaborate and corroborate around the development of hydropower at the base of Rudeye Reservoir. That hydropower is now owned by the city of Aspen solely. But that is kind of where RWAPA began. And the thought was at the time that the jurisdictions within the watershed, so Aspen, Snowmass, Basalt, Carbondale, Eagle County, Pitkin County, and for some time Garfield County participated too, they recognize, like many of our resources, water does not pay attention to jurisdictional boundaries, and that we may be better served as a watershed to look at the bigger picture, to look at our water more holistically, and to share in responsibilities, share in protection, and to put together joint efforts for the protection of that water resource. So we're essentially the eyes and the ears and the voice for the Roaring Fork watershed as it relates to water resources, water quality, water availability, water supply, and when we're thinking about how we manage that and share responsibility for that as a watershed. We have a board of elected officials from each of those jurisdictions that I mentioned, and one part-time contract employee, that's me. So like part-time, so a pretty small job for me. And then the town of Basalt's representative on our board is Ryan Slack, and he has been there for a couple of years, which is how long I've been there. My predecessor was Mark Fuller, and he was the executive director for Rudeye Water and Power Authority for almost 40 years. We meet on a quarterly basis, and so we try to, in pre-COVID times, we would do those meetings across the watershed, but now they're, like everyone, via some virtual platform. So I think that I get a lot of questions about kind of how are we different from the Roaring Fork Conservancy, or how are we different from the Pitkin County Healthy Rivers and Streams Board, which are organizations that are also working in watershed. And what I would say is that we work closely with those organizations, and we are partners with them in lots of ways, but the ways that we're different is that we're comprised of elected officials. So we're more government rooted. We think about policy and planning. We're not strictly an education or project organization, though that is part of our work. So we're able to advocate on behalf of the communities. And so I participate regularly in communications, and I'll try to be specific about Basalt tonight, but if you're interested in what we do throughout the watershed, I can bring up other examples and would be happy to do so. But Basalt reaps a lot of the benefits of the Rudeye Water and Power Authority because we work so heavily in Rudeye Reservoir and on the releases that happen out of Rudeye and in the Frying Pan and in the lower Roaring Fork. And so I, like I was saying, I regularly participate in communications about how that flow is managed. I research, review, and represent us, the Roaring Fork watershed, at a regional and state level on the things that we, as all of our jurisdictions, agree upon, and as directed by our board. And I bring information about what's happening on a regional and state level back to our board. So examples of this includes like commenting on how changes to the Clean Water Act may affect the Roaring Fork watershed, or how are we represented in Colorado's water plan? Are we adequately represented when we're thinking about the demand and use of water in the future, and from the Roaring Fork watershed perspective? I also assist our valley and our communities in fostering our own plans. And so we have several stream management plans, which is our plans designed around how do we better manage the limited resource that we have of water in our rivers so that we benefit all of the uses and demands that we have on our water. So how do we better manage, supplying water for municipal and agricultural purposes, but also retaining water for recreational and environmental purposes in the river. And so those are stream management plans, but we also have the Roaring Fork Watershed Plan, which is a large plan that many stakeholders in the valley work together on and identified over 250 action items of ways that we want to improve and protect the Roaring Fork water. And so that plan needed someone to host it and to facilitate it and to move it forward and to make sure that we as communities are making progress on it, and that falls on RWAPA's shoulders. We may be most well known because of our RUDI A&S inspections. So the A&S program up at RUDI Reservoir is the Aquatic Nuisance Species Program. It's essentially the boat inspection program that's operated there to ensure that we're not introducing mussels into RUDI Reservoir. Colorado is mussel-free because of the rigorous inspection program that CPW has for most of the reservoirs in the state. RWAPA and RUDI Reservoir are a little different because it's not a state-owned facility. And so there are lots of partners that make sure that the A&S program is successful at RUDI. The Bureau of Reclamation owns the water and the dam. The land is owned by the Forest Service. The program in the state is sponsored by CPW. The reservoir itself sits on Eagle and Pitkin County land. And so it takes a lot of partners to make sure that that happens. And RWAPA is the coordinator for all of that. And we also receive funding from each of our participating jurisdictions, as well as those partnering agencies that I mentioned, and the Colorado River District and Ute Water, which Colorado River District and Ute Water own or contract a significant share of the water in RUDI Reservoir. So they're very interested in ensuring that that water is protected and that the infrastructure downstream of it is protected. Let's talk about that program just for a minute and move forward. So that program, like I said, Colorado is mussel-free. We have a lot of boaters at RUDI Reservoir that also boat at Lake Powell, and Lake Powell is infested with mussels. And these mussels are just a terrible nuisance species in that they proliferate really quickly, they breed really quickly, they're filtering animals, so they just destroy all of the quality of the water. Basically, they're eating all the macroinvertebrates. And so they could easily destroy the recreational opportunities that we have at RUDI, the fishery that we have. They could infest in ways that would make it impossible to produce hydropower for the city of Aspen's hydropower, their power portfolio. And then we are also concerned that that could impact the fishery of the Frying Pan River as well. And so this is a rigorous inspection program, and the threat is increasing. In 2018 was the first year that we found boats that could be carrying mussels. We found 2 in 2018. In 2019, we found 6, and in 2020, we have found 17 boats. And we operated for a month, we shortened our month of operation, or I shortened our season of operation by a month. That is also the most of any reservoir in the state of Colorado. And so the threat at RUDI is real, it is growing, and it's growing exponentially. And RWAPA is responsible for ensuring the success of that program. So some more things that RWAPA does, particularly for like the town of Basalt may benefit from, is in that release program. And so how is water released out of RUDI Reservoir, and how does it affect the Frying Pan River? And so I participate in phone calls regularly about how the reservoirs in the West are operated, and I'm advocating on behalf of our community. So I'm advocating for releases that ensure that we have wadeable flows, or that might ensure that through the winter, our macroinvertebrate population, which feeds our fish and our fishery, is going to be successful for the coming spring, and that we get the that we are attempting to get flushing flows, so that again is increasing the health of that of the frying pan. And sometimes in the summer, specifically in 2 out of the last 3 summers, we've had temperature issues on the lower Roaring Fork, where we have had to ask for fishing to stop, for anglers to stop fishing to reduce the stress on our fishery because temperatures in the river were so high. And so I'm working with these partners that have contract water in Rudai to ensure that they're releasing, to try to achieve some releases that decrease the temperature on the river so that we can continue to recreate on it and that we can continue to support it in the environmental needs that it has. So those are some examples. Like also following the Lake Christine fire, I worked with the Colorado River District to quickly secure legal flows that we could release out of Rudai if we were to get a flood that released ash into the river, so that we could flush that ash and that debris out of the river quickly with releases from Rudai Reservoir. And so that's kind of the ways that I'm servicing Basalt and the Basalt community, but also I do other things like that throughout the Roaring Fork watershed. I don't know why my clicker doesn't seem to want to respond. I've been working with Roaring Fork Conservancy on a couple of tools that just bring water information to those that are interested in it a little easier. And so, like I said, we have a Roaring Fork Watershed Plan. We worked on this tool to try to bring that plan into a visual, interactive, web-based tool.
Crystal, April, I think, unfortunately, we're running a little bit short on time. We've got a couple of public hearings scheduled, and I know we want to quickly address our approval for our continued agreement here. So don't want to give you the bum's rush here, but if we could move it along, I got to watch our time schedule here a little bit.
Mayor, I move that the town council approve resolution number 38, series of 2020, approving an intergovernmental agreement to the Rudai Water and Power Authority.
Second.
So that has been moved and seconded. Before we vote, April, do you have anything else you would like to offer? You know, this is, we're about to approve this, so maybe comments should be limited.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may briefly.
Go ahead, Jeff.
RUAPA exists as a pursuant to an intergovernmental agreement amongst various local governments in the Roaring Fork Valley. RUAPA went through a process of amending and updating what was a somewhat outdated IGA. All of the various jurisdictions provided comments on that IGA that were then incorporated into the draft that's in your packet. And unless April has anything else to add, that's been motioned and seconded to approve.
Okay. Pam, do you want to call the roll, or can we do this voice vote, Jeff?
Roll call, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Pam, please call our roll.
Certainly. Let's begin with Ryan Slack.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Kane.
Yes.
Thank you. Elise Hoddle.
Yes, and thank you, April. That was great information.
Thank you, Elise. Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
Thank you, Gary. Glenn Drummond.
Yes.
Thank you, Glenn. David Knight.
Yes, and thank you, April.
Thank you, David. Bill Knight and Bill Infante.
Yes, and thank you, April, and thank you, Ryan Slack, for representing Basalt on RUAPA.
Motion carries unanimously.
Can I ask one question before we leave this item? This is a very short question, should have a short answer. Last time I tuned in on this, I think the town of Basalt owned about 500 acre feet in Rudai. Rudai stores about 100,000 acre feet. Is that still operative, or did we buy more, or have we sold, or what's our current status on water ownership in Rudai?
Mr. Mayor, we actually have 2 contracts for Rudai Water that we amended not too long ago, and those are now, it was back in 2013, so there is no expiration date on these contracts. For one of them, we get 100 acre feet annually, and for another, we get 200 acre feet annually. So we're, looking at a total of 500.
Okay, great.
And just for clarification, those contracts are for the town's augmentation plan for its municipal water supply. And, ensure that the town can divert and use its water and pray year round for domestic purposes.
Yeah, I just from time to time have laid awake at night thinking wondering if we could ever augment flows in the stressful times, but that's a conversation for another day. So thank you, April. This was a good update and a good reminder of what the Route I Water Power Authority is all about. We're pleased to continue our relationship, so thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And that is something that I'm looking into, is the ability to use that water for other purposes that Basalt might find beneficial.
Great. Thank you very much. So we will now turn to our next order of business, which is the third quarter financial report. Christy?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Okay, there we go. All right. So the first thing I'd note on these quarterly financials, once again, a great thank you to the prior work of the Finance Advisory Board and Council with the investment policy in creating the report and the transparent nature of the report. I really love it. I think it's easy to put together. It's easy to read for the public. I've heard some really good comments about it. So hopefully this is moving us once again in that direction of fiscal transparency, which is constantly our goal. And I believe this report does that. The other thing I'll note about the report is that it's along the same lines as what we've been discussing with our budget. There really isn't any change in the financial condition from the last time we've discussed this. We continue to discuss this monthly, at least, sometimes every other week. So I think we have a pretty good handle on our finances at this point in time. So there's no big surprises in the quarterly financial report. Just as noted here with our general fund revenue by source, 60% is sales tax is what we would anticipate. 17.5% is property tax. So most of the general fund sources of funds are those two sources once again. And our expenditures by department are listed here. Now, I think that really our police department is usually budgeted at closer to 25%. And some of these other departments are a little bit bigger, like your public works, but because of the timing of the report, when we finish off some of our summer projects, that sometimes these are underestimated at these quarter ends. So just a note on that. I'm not going to belabor the report. I mean, you guys are pretty used to it, but it does note sales tax strong at 85%. Of the budget, which is obviously over 3/4. So shows that we're ahead once again, still keeping pace with that about 13% anticipated increase over budget. So and let's see, are there any questions on the general fund that you guys had specifically? Okay.
Any questions for Christy?
The restricted funds, the vast majority is taxes. Once again, showing in our pie graph here, 72% are for post-sales tax and also for lodging tax and tobacco tax. So that makes up the vast majority. There is a smaller percentage for building permit fees and for our RETAs. We did receive in quite a few RETAs actually in October after this report was ran. for September 30, because of some of the developments that are coming in, Park Modern over there by Willis, and that kind of thing. So, receiving quite a few fees on that, this month actually. But other than that, once again, on the sales tax side, 86.6% received. It's pretty much tracking with where we anticipate. We could be even ahead of what we were looking at on our projection in our budget documents, but we'll see how the COVID impact play out through the end of the year, which could play into things. So, but so far it looks pretty good there. So the only other thing I'd note, our bond fund is receiving a bonded debt, and our water fund is for water service is received $726,000 year to date. We've got one more quarter to bill for, and that's a lower quarter because it's not a watering irrigation quarter, but still we're right on track with our water service. We looked at our receivables and we only are showing about, I think it was 13,000 or so that are late delinquent right now, which is actually pretty good given everything that's happening. So that's looking pretty strong also, relatively speaking. Close to an average amount that you would anticipate in your receivables balance right now. So that's it.
So questions for Christie on the third quarter report? I had just one kind of curiosity. I think I probably know the answer, but you know, we had budgeted, I guess, $150K. We did $200,000 of interest earnings in 19. We're down to year-to-date 62, and it looks like we're gonna. Well, I mean, is that just reflective of the deterioration of bond and fixed income and interest rates declines?
I'm sorry, which one?
The interest income. It's
yes. Interest income is way off of last year. We're getting somewhere in the area of 5% on our investment last year, and now I'm going to show you just one thing here, Kane, that'll help with this is the little box we now put up here. It's very useful for this information. You can see we're only getting, plus, we're getting 0.24%, that's 0.24%, and 0.09%. The interest rates are just so low this year that we're just not getting any interest on our best compared.
Okay, that explains it. Now the rest of it all makes sense, so thank you very much. Any questions of council for Christie on our third quarter report?
Mayor Kane, this isn't on that subject, but could we just remind folks to please mute their phones?
Yeah, some weird
I'm just getting some weird feedback. Thank you.
So with
Thanks,
that,
Christie.
I'm sorry?
I was just going to say thank you and good presentation.
Yeah.
Enjoyed looking through this.
Yeah, the reporting's excellent, guys. This is, really very thorough. We've made the data here, so thank you.
I hate to call this out, but Briston, with Briston's iPhone.
That's where the noise is coming through.
That is the source of the interference.
Briston, can you hear us?
Yeah, I just took you off mute.
Yeah,
so I'm on mute.
We can hear you.
Mute your phone. That would be great until you're up. Okay. Do you have some kind of detection software there or something, Glenn? That's a little spooky that you actually knew where that was coming from.
I could see it was the only one in the whole screen that's not muted.
Very shrewd. Okay, thank you, guys. So, Christie, we will now move on to our next agenda topic, if there are no further questions. So our next order of business is our public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 22. It's It's an ordinance of the Town Council, Town of Basalt, Colorado, granting an extension of vested rights for the Stotts Mill development in Basalt, Colorado. James Lent and Jeff Conklin and Briston Peterson.
Yes, just a quick second. I'm going to share my screen. Sorry about that. Yes, this is a continued public hearing and second reading of an ordinance that would approve of a 12-month extension of vested rights on the Stotts Mill development. As was presented at the last meeting, the property subject to the extension request is the Stotts Mill property. I've got it up on the screen. It's about 18 acres of land, and it's on the east side of Southside Drive between the Southside subdivision and the Rio Grande Trail. As background, that was noted at first reading, the development project, let me move on, includes 113 dwelling units, a 4,000 square foot daycare facility to be built by the applicant, approximately 4.4 acres of parkland, with a north park that's more of a passive park to act as a buffer between the proposed development and south side, and then the south park, which is a more active park that's to include tennis courts and multi-purpose courts. And the unit breakdown that was approved back in 2017 when the applicant received vested rights included 64 multifamily units, 49 single-family and duplex lots, with the majority of those lots being small lots of 3,300 to 5,000 square feet to accommodate houses of between 1,300 and 2,400 square feet. In the development approvals from 2017, there were 19 category affordable housing units, multifamily units, and then 7 deed-restricted lots that were part of the program, 4 of which were to be sold at reduced max sales price to entities of the council's choosing. And so the applicant received in 2017 3 years of vested rights and contractual phasing to construct the North Park, the spine trail that goes down, as well as all the utilities and roads in the development within the 3-year period from the 2017 approval. And the applicants were getting ready this spring to commence the infrastructure work, but they had difficulty finalizing a ditch agreement with the Home Supply Ditch Company for the development's interface with the ditch on the north portion of the property. Here's the ditch. And it runs between Southside and Stotts Mill. It took about 6 months to kind of work through that, and staff believes that we're kind of at an amicable solution with the ditch company. We're getting really close. And so the applicants were not able to put in that infrastructure that they were required to do. So they, as noted at the last meeting, originally applied for an 18-month extension, but they reduced that since to a 12-month extension, which is the time period they believe that they can get the infrastructure completed in. As was noted at the last meeting, staff is supportive of the extension request. Staff felt that the project had considerable community benefit and is consistent with the master plan. The council approved the ordinance on first reading at the last meeting, and there haven't been any changes to the ordinance. As was noted at the last meeting, the only code changes that have happened since 2017 are the sustainable building regulation updates, as well as the wildfire protection ordinance that was approved recently, and those are included in the ordinance to be applicable to the development. At the last meeting, the council requested a construction schedule from the applicant. The applicant provided that, and it's included in your packet. It indicates that they're going to do the infrastructure in the next year, and then they've identified that they would start vertical construction on the multifamily development in April of 2021. So this evening, staff would suggest taking applicant comments and then providing public comment period, because it is a public hearing, and providing council discussion. And if you're comfortable, you could approve the ordinance. I'll stop sharing my screen. And Briston and Mark Chain, Briston Peterson and Mark Chain are here representing the applicant group. Do you guys have comments?
Mark, got your mute on.
Muted.
You're muted, Mark Chain. You gotta.
Yeah, hey, James, thanks.
Sorry. Go ahead, Briston.
Yeah, sorry for the company. There's a document that has been circulated, both to the town's council, that I believe is ready for signature. There has been a letter of credit that has been circulated to town staff that has been accepted by town staff. So we're in a position where we've also delivered the revised, updated record plat that I believe is in the hands for the mayor to execute. Our goal is to commence work the first Monday in November, and literally do the mass grading, the infrastructure, and put in the deep utilities through the winter. And if you have any questions on the schedule, I'd be more than glad to answer that.
All right. Are there any questions of council to staff or the applicant? At this point, I think we will take public comment. I know Mark Bell, who lives nearby there, would like to comment. I don't know if there are others. So at this point, Gary, did you have a comment?
I did have one. The whole thing with this ditch thing, going forward, the ditch could decide tomorrow to knock down a lot of that vegetation. So I think we just have to be prepared for a future where something happens to some of that vegetation. So anyway, I'm just bringing it up and going, yeah, we saved it for now, but I think, are we having an agreement? Is part of the ditch agreement that they don't pipe it and they don't cut out all that vegetation, or is it just to allow this development to continue?
It allows the development to continue, but it doesn't state that the ditch company can't remove the vegetation in the future or pipe it. It just doesn't require this developer to pipe it, which was where it was headed.
And I'll just add to that, the main purpose of that ditch modification agreement is to have the ditch company consent to locations of improvements within the ditch easement, including a crossing that goes over to Allison Lane, and then long-term obligations towards maintenance and so forth. We did get today comments on that agreement, and we'll be working as quickly as possible towards finalizing that.
Well, Briston began the presentation with a comment that you're on the 1 yard line. I just hope you're not the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, well, to your point, Mayor, I thought I was on the 1 yard line quite a while ago, and one of the questions I asked staff is, in the event that this agreement can't get executed, I don't see any reason why. I think we're there, and I think town council was there. But in the event it can't get executed in a timely manner, is there a way for us to proceed with the project so that the tail is not wagging the dog. And that's a question I asked James. I don't know if it's appropriate to have that conversation with council, but I could share with you from the developer's perspective, we've done everything within our means to be accommodating to the ditch council's attorney, who just keeps manipulating documents and plain word semantics and all types of things. It just keeps going on and on and on. And it's very frustrating when that 1 yard line just keeps moving on the developer.
Well, I think we'll leave that to James and Jeff to work through. That's probably not, appropriate for us to have a freewheeling conversation about process. So let's leave it at that. And at this point, I think we should take comment from the public and see what we. So.
Okay, so I'm going to start my clock, but we have 3 individuals that wanted to speak, and I'm going to do it in the order that they came to me. The first one is Mark Bell. So give me a second and I'll place that call.
Okay.
Susan, as you get him on the line, you might just apologize for the late hour. I don't know that he was aware of our gap in timing here.
Okay, and then just to make an announcement that if you want to speak to text 970-987-7010 or email planning@basalt.net. Sorry, just lost that.
Hello, this is Mark.
Hey Mark, this is Susan Phelps. I'm in the Basalt Town Council meeting, and sorry we were running a little behind schedule for some reasons, but this is our public hearing time for Stotts Mill, and I don't know if you heard the mayor's comments. And normally we like to keep the comments to about 3 minutes or so. So you're on.
Sure, I've got about 2 minutes of comments here. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members, for granting me time tonight. My name is Mark Bell, and I live at 429 Meadowview Lane. I've been a resident of Southside for over 6 years. It's a wonderful, quiet, and safe, family-oriented neighborhood. The neighborhood children are often out and about playing in the parks or riding around on the streets. Unfortunately, I feel the Stotts Mill project poses a serious threat to this fundamental character of our neighborhood. I've reviewed the plans and proposals, and I'm very concerned about the proposed density with regard to traffic capacity. Quite frankly, the plan does not sufficiently address or account for the inevitable dramatic increase in residential and construction traffic. High volume times in the morning and afternoon will overwhelm the traffic infrastructure, especially as commuters, high schoolers, and construction vehicles overlap. If you've ever tried to leave Southside after a VHS football game, you'll know what I mean in terms of how quickly it can get congested and backed up. It's one lane until the park and ride, which means that all DV, Down Valley, and Basalt traffic will clog up everything, even for the Up Valley traffic. This will happen twice a day, 5 days a week. My concern for our neighborhood is that when this happens, the Southside residential streets become a shortcut. I have serious concerns about the safety of the kids and the fundamental character of the neighborhood with cars zipping around to beat traffic. The plan simply does not adequately solve this problem. And with this in mind, I ask that you decline the proposal for an extension to the Stotts Mill project. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Oops. So our next person that we're calling is Christo Halsey, and I'll try to place that call.
Hello, this is Chris.
Hi, this is Susan Phelps from the town of Basalt. You're in the Basalt Town Council meeting and the public hearing on Stotts Mill, and we understand that you had some comments that you would like to enter into the public record.
Absolutely, and I'll be brief, but I did want to comment as a resident of the neighborhood.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, my name is Chris Halsey. I've been in the area for about 30 years, and my wife and I moved to the south side area. We felt it was, you know, a safe and quiet neighborhood to raise kids. I'm a ski patrol director at the Aspen Skiing Company, and one of my jobs is to recognize traffic patterns and create safe plans for our skiers and snowboarders on our slopes. And I just feel like I can recognize issues with traffic patterns fairly well, even though it's cars versus skiers. I could see that, in my opinion, the south side area is becoming maxed out with the new commercial and residential building. And that, you know, the construction traffic and real estate growth, you know, has obviously increased dramatically in the last 5 years. Every year we do notice, you know, more traffic, cars are going faster. Sometimes it's even difficult to find a place to park. And, you know, my family and I use the parks in the area, the bike park over in Basalt, the skateboard park, and, you know, we're on the sidewalks and crosswalks every day. And so, you know, traffic safety is my main concern here. But I also did want to point out, you know, we've noticed as residents for a while that, you know, the Elgibel Willits area has really sprawled into one big continuous neighborhood kind of. And, you know, one of the things we enjoy about Basalt is the open space between neighborhoods. And we feel like, you know, the Stotts Mill project would, you know, limit some of this open space feel. But in closing, I just want to, you know, note that the increased traffic in the sprawl and south side, to us, it feels like it's pretty maxed out already. You know, there are times you have to wait for 3 cycles to get through the Highway 82 light to get to Basalt or to go westbound on 82. And, you know, these are our main concerns, and I just wanted to, you know, have you guys hear a comment about that. That's all I have for now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the comments. Susan, we have one more?
Yes, we got one more. This is from Mike Steiner, and I'll place his call. And then I'll double check that I didn't get any emails or text messages while this is going on.
This is Mike.
Hi Mike, this is Susan Phelps over at Basalt Town Hall. We're in our public hearing on Stotts Mill, and we understand that you would like to make a few comments.
Hey Susan, thanks for getting back to me. And thanks council for listening to public comment. Yeah, I'll keep my comments pretty brief. I'd like to voice opposition against moving forward with Stotts Mill. I'm a Southside Basalt resident, and I guess my chief concern is existing infrastructure here with roads and having a lot of the large trucks, construction vehicles going through what I believe to be a one road kind of in and out system. We do have a lot of families here with young children, including myself, and with all the planned site construction for Basalt Vista phases 2 and 3. In this large residential project, I feel like it's going to be kind of a never-ending traffic and construction issue for the town of Basalt. So yeah, just wanted to voice a comment, and also I'd like to give praise to Basalt Town Council and Basalt Town staff for all that you do and keeping this a great community to live in. So thanks for hearing me out. I appreciate it, and thanks for the call, Susan.
You bet.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for the comment.
Okay, thanks, Mike. And I'm just gonna double check that I didn't get any more emails. If I didn't get any emails, then I understand there's no text messages coming in, so I think we're good to close the public comment portion of the meeting.
All right, thank you. I will show that the public hearing is closed as of 7:20, or 7:40. You know, I would just like to make a comment to the public that called in and residents of Southside. The matter before us tonight is not one of whether we approve or not approve of Stotts Mill. The Stotts Mill development was approved in final form some time ago. What's before us tonight is a much narrower question. This is a fine-tuned question about continuation of a vested right. So the matters of community character and traffic generation and parks, fortunately or unfortunately, were thoroughly vetted and discussed over a multi-year period of time. And so that is not really the question that's before the council tonight. It's whether the applicant has a legitimate hardship in having been able to commence work in a timely manner. That's the scope of our review here. So if we vote for this, it's certainly not a vote to ignore your concerns. I'm sure they were voiced and heard on multiple occasions during the public hearing process. So we care for all of our citizens. We care for your neighborhoods, and we are here in a much narrower context than might appear. So I just want to make that clear for the record. So comments from council, questions of the applicant or staff. Everybody's seen the construction schedule. Glenn, I think it was you that requested it last time. So if there are questions, let's have them now. Any question? Hands up. I think Ryan Slack's hand is up.
James, could you quickly remind me of the traffic improvements they do need to make? I know we did address this during the original hearing, and sorry, my dog's trying to join. And so it might help some of the public understand what's truly going on.
Sure. There was a traffic study that was done in 2015 and then updated again in 2017, I believe it was. And as part of that traffic study, it was for all of Southside. There were improvements that were identified that were laneage improvements, so adding a lane in and adding a lane out of Southside at Basalt Avenue, which were actually done as part of the pedestrian underpass. And then there was a mini roundabout improvement that was identified at Basalt Avenue and Cody Lane to better organize traffic in that area, to keep the intersection operating at an acceptable level of service based on traffic engineering standards. And so there were a cost estimate that was put to those improvements, and then there was a fair share requirement on the developments that were previously approved, including Stotts Mill, to pay into the improvement that was identified. It was identified also that the use of that money could be used for other purposes if there was a better solution that was thought of before the time came to need that solution. So there's some flexibility in using those funds, but that was kind of the overall concept. And then, you know, in the long term, we also have in the master plan the concept of doing the South Side underpass under Highway 82 between South Side Drive and Midland Avenue by the post office. That project is on the state's funding list in the new 2020 state transportation plan, but there's a big price tag to that, so that could be a ways down the line. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Any further questions for staff or the applicant? David Knight, sir.
Yeah, I don't know if this was ever covered when this was passed, but I heard the concern about secondary streets and traffic being pushed onto that due to traffic on South Side. Is there a mitigation plan for that? And if not, could there be such as restricting traffic on those secondary streets to local traffic only?
Well, originally, as part of the several applications, you know, there's been multiple applications on this property over time. There was originally a vehicular access connection between the Stotts Mill property that was proposed and the South Side subdivision on Allison Lane. Through those development reviews over time, it was reduced down to just a pedestrian connection between the Stotts Mill development and the South Side subdivision, with an emergency one-lane access potential if there was, you know, some sort of accident that happened on South Side Drive and they needed to get emergency access through there. So it was reduced down to just a pedestrian connection between South Side and the Stotts Mill development. There wasn't discussion at the 2017 review toward making the streets in South Side just local traffic only. I suppose that could be up for consideration.
We could add that as part of the construction management plan.
Yeah, we could, you know, as part of the construction management plan, there could be the potential to require that at least during the construction phases.
Okay, thanks.
Any additional questions for staff or applicant from council? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion. This motion would be to extend vested rights for an additional year. So, this presents an interesting situation. Jeff, I have not encountered this one in my long tenure as mayor, but
can I?
Pardon?
Go ahead,
Glenn.
So I motion to approve this on first reading due to the fact that I believe Jeff Conklin informed us that there's, how much legal ramification are we dealing with here? As far as like, what do we have to do? How's this end up for the applicant? Where are we at?
Right, so the vested rights period is also part of the contractual phasing for the development and tied in with the annexation of the property. And so the vested rights, as we've discussed, insulate the developer from future changes to the land use code that might affect their project. It allows them to pursue and complete a site-specific development plan. And here, if there was not an extension of vested rights, would create some issues potentially underneath the annexation agreement, but I think there would need to be some subsequent action of council related to how that project may or may not be able to proceed. But it would, at a minimum, kind of create some ambiguity in that agreement. And so that.
Did they stop?
Yep.
I hope.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by pound. Enter your participant ID. Please enter the meeting password followed by pound. You are in the meeting now. There are more than 20 participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded.
I just asked Pam and she could explain it, but we did have Pro Velocity come in and they made some changes to the firewall. It sounds like that they had found some potential issue there, well, lasted for a couple hours anyway, but doesn't seem like it was the remedy. So they were here tonight for an hour sitting in on a meeting to see if something happened, see if they could catch it, but.
So we're back live here. Jeff, we didn't pick up kind of your last
Yeah,
statement.
I think the last word we heard was ambiguity.
Yeah, so that was about where I was wrapping it up. That's kind of how this fits within the overall development approvals framework. In terms of, as a procedural matter, if there's not a motion, the action would fail for lack of motion. If council needed more information, as in terms of, more specifically, what is the, if council needs more information related to this decision in the event that this is not approved, another option would be to continue the public hearing until our next meeting, so that staff or the applicant provide additional information or analysis that might be needed.
Well, in the interest of trying to break the ice, I will make a go at this, and I would make the motion, move that town council adopt ordinance number 22, series of 2020 on second reading, and see if I can scare up a second for that. Is there a second?
I'll second you, Bill.
Who is that?
Me.
Glenn Drummond.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded, and we will, at this point, unless there's discussion on the motion, were there any questions of clarification on the motion?
Can we move the motion for a second?
Is the mayor allowed to make a motion? Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody else wants to. I think is the.
I just didn't know. I was checking.
Can I pose one question for council?
Sure.
This was approved in 2009, again in 2017. I think it's important that we look at the history and we look at the amount of vetting process that has gone into it and evaluate all of those things whole. This is simply an extension of vested rights, as Mayor informed us. We're not talking about a new proposal. We're not talking about a new development. This worked for 11 plus years. It has been vetted in all sorts of ways. Now, granted, should it have taken this long to get done? I think we all voiced our opinions. No, it shouldn't have. But let's look at it in that context.
Any further discussion on the motion, David Knight? And then I think Ryan has a comment maybe. Go ahead, David.
is it permissible to add that, restriction for, local traffic only on secondary streets to this motion? That's a question for Jeff, and if it is permissible, I would ask that we add that.
So you have to ask me if I was going to amend my motion.
Well, Mayor, would you be willing to amend your motion to restrict the secondary streets off the south side in the existing neighborhood to local traffic only?
Yes, I would agree to that friendly amendment. So it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion on?
Doesn't the second have to also agree with the change in motion?
Glenn needs to second that amendment.
Yeah, Glenn, are you okay with the amended motion?
Absolutely, I agree with that amended motion.
And just for matter of procedure, the mayor is a full participating member of the council, unlike mayors in some jurisdictions that are just ceremonial head and don't actually vote.
So we have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, I would ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Certainly. Elise Huddle.
Yes. I have reservations, but yes.
Okay, let's go to Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
Thank you. Bill Infante.
I share Elise's yes with reservations.
Yes, thank you. Ryan Slack.
Yes.
Thank you. Bill Kane.
Yes.
David Knight.
Yes.
And Glenn Drummond.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thanks, everybody. That concludes that item. No worse than a root canal, so we'll get on to the next one. The next order of business is public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 21, series of 2020. Ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, approving amendments to the Municipal Code of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, amending Table 1 in Town Code, Section 16-31, R4MD, Medium Density Zone District, to add a maximum size for a two-bedroom, two-level units in 100% deed-restricted projects. James.
Yes, thank you. This is a continued public hearing and second reading of a code amendment request submitted by Habitat for Humanity. And as the mayor noted, this is a request for a code amendment to the R4MD zone district to add language to the R4MD zone district, adding a maximum unit size of 1,235 square feet for a maximum square footage for two-level, two-bedroom units in fully deed-restricted projects. And as was noted at first reading at the last meeting, the reason the applicant is making this request relates to the Basalt Vista Affordable Housing Project behind the high school. As was presented at the last meeting, a portion of the units in the project are for employees of Picken County, and then a portion of the units are for employees from the school district. And the project is getting towards its final phase here to build the last 9 units. And of those last 9 units, 12 are for the school district employees. And as was discussed at the last meeting, the school district has found that there's demand issues with the mix, and so they're looking to convert a couple of the 3-bedroom duplexes units that are still to be built to 2-bedroom units to better meet the school district's demand. And in conjunction with that, they're proposing to reduce the price point on those units to 70% of the area median income to better fit the teachers' salaries. The resulting 2-bedroom units, however, from the conversion would be over the maximum 2-bedroom unit size by 85 square feet. And so the applicants requested the code amendment to add the 2-level, 2-bedroom unit size of 1,235 square feet to the zone district for projects that are 100% deed-restricted housing. As was discussed at the last meeting, the Basalt Affordable Community Housing Committee, BAC, the P&Z, and staff were supportive of the proposed amendment. The council approved the ordinance on first reading at the last meeting, and there haven't been any changes to the ordinance since the first reading. So this evening, staff would recommend taking applicant comments, taking public comments as it is a public hearing, and then providing council discussion. Ultimately, if you're comfortable with the approval ordinance, you could approve the ordinance on second reading. I'll stop sharing my screen here. And this evening we have Gail Schwartz and Bo Blodgett, and I think Jake was on here as well from Habitat. Gail, would you guys like to have comments?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Council. A late hour, yet I appreciate all of your. And just a small point of clarification in James' summary, and thank James and Susan for working with us on the modification of our entitlement of we're really foregoing two bedrooms, and we had an entitlement for over 400 square feet, of which these units, we're trying to reduce the size to accommodate the demand. So the last phase of the project is phase 3, and we have 9 total units, and of that, 7 units will be for the Roaring Fork School District. And because of COVID, the impact to the district, the impact to the employees, the impact to the budget, that we feel to be able to really support the teachers and the staff and really provide more affordability with these units, and to provide a size that will accommodate entry level into the units of these 7 units, that we're going through a pretty aggressive marketing campaign, which really will support the teachers and their decision making around the units, their affordability, and making this a long-term asset of the district, so of the teachers of the district. So with that, I really would appreciate either hearing from Jake Israedi, who is on the phone, who is our construction supervisor at the site, and we'll talk about why we wanted to make these changes, and this being the most efficient way to make the changes, the most cost-effective mechanism. And then Bo Blodgett, who has worked so closely with the school district to identify unit costs, and by reducing this project to a 70% AMI, and really the project included 80, 100, 120% AMI with its initial approvals, 70% will require even a further subsidy by Habitat. And in closing my remarks, I really would look forward to the council coming and seeing these units, this community, and what an incredible contribution it makes to ownership affordable housing in Basalt. And I'm speaking with James, and hopefully this we can set up a tour for both yourselves and Box, so you can see what incredible opportunity and quality we've invested into these homes for our teachers and our local workforce. So maybe Jake would have a comment, if that's okay with James?
Thanks for the offer, Gail. I'm sure there'll be some interest in coming out and touring around. So Jake, did you want to make a comment?
Sure. Yeah, for some reason I can't get my video on, but I'll just leave it for a question. I think James and Gail covered it, but I'll just quickly state that we have looked, at this in every possible way with our architects and engineers to try and find the best way to do it, and this we feel is the best way. So, and that's why we're here tonight trying to amend this, to keep the consistency in the neighborhood and keep the cost down and also accommodate the school's needs. And I'll pass it to Bo if he has anything.
Yeah, sure. So, you know, we've kind of presented this to the teachers in terms of we have 2 bedrooms and we've added affordability at 70% AMI, and what we've seen is overwhelmingly positive response. And so I think what we've kind of accomplished here and what we're proposing will really help fit the needs of the teachers. And I think that's all I'd like to add at this point.
Comments of council for the applicant or for James? If there are no questions, I'd be pleased to entertain a motion.
But you're gonna open the public hearing first.
Oh, forgot about that. That's right. Okay, so at this
Can
point.
I ask a quick question though?
Yeah, go ahead, Elise.
I'm looking in the memo for it now, and I can't find it. But wasn't there something about changing to 70% AMI or something like that? Is that part of this or not?
Yes, we are offering a 70% AMI category. So yeah, that's part of it's not part of this amendment, but it is part of what we are doing to make these more affordable for teachers.
So
Is that?
Go ahead.
Sorry, Gail.
No, I'm sorry, Commissioner. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So I just, so the request is for exceeding the maximum square footage for the unit. And in addition to changing, we are also changing and creating more affordability for the units, whether there are 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, or 4 bedrooms. We're moving, and the price will reflect the income level of the family that's purchasing. So the same unit could go to a 70% AMI family or 100% AMI family, but the price will be different for those 2 families. So that's where we are. So we maintain the same quality of the unit and the same configuration and the same quality of the neighborhood, but we're going to further subsidize, as I mentioned at the last hearing. This project will be subsidized in excess of $9 million to create 27 permanently affordable ownership housing units.
So,
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, just to add on to that, this really came about from us wanting to provide more of a subsidy and also add those 2 bedrooms, which kind of better fit the market. And believe it or not, having that larger square footage was the most cost-effective way to reach that goal. And so, we looked at design costs, we looked at various ways to get that 2 bedroom, and this is absolutely the easiest and most cost-effective way.
Okay, so at this point, we will open this public comment. It is now 8:08 p.m. So Susan, if you would give people instructions for calling in.
Yes, please email planning@basalt.net or text 970-987-7010 with your name and your phone number, and we'll call you. And just to note that we haven't had any public comments on this either during the P&Z public hearing or at the first public hearing that we had here 2 weeks ago. And so we have about a minute left in our clock.
Jake, we can see you now. Be careful.
Believe it or not, my mouse was in my laptop bag with the button being held down, and I could not figure out how to get my mouse to click the video.
Whatever can happen will happen.
Well, as I said, Mr. Mayor, we so welcome the council to come and tour with us. We've gone through it's been such a commitment and such a great partnership and a great asset, and we are even making just tremendous headway with making the units more affordable, and we want to share that with you.
Yeah, thank you, Gail. Yeah,
Okay.
I just think, it's such a beautifully designed project, great location. I just think everybody's a winner as a result of this thing. So, really appreciate Habitat, and we're lucky to have you in our community. I'm sure we all feel that. So, we just have to go through these nettlesome details from time.
That it is.
So I haven't received any emails, and I don't believe that any text came in, right, Ryan? So I think we're good to go on the public comment part.
Thank you. Then we'll show the public hearing closed at 8:10 p.m. and ask the council if there is interest in a motion or further discussion. Glenn Drummond.
Mayor, I move that town council adopt ordinance number 21, series of 2020 on second reading.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded. Did you find out who seconded it, Pam?
Sounded like Elise.
I think she nipped it by the wire there, yeah. So we have a motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Absolutely. Let's begin with Bill Infante.
Yes, I approve.
Thank you, Bill. Let's see, Bill King.
Yes.
Thank you, Bill. Ryan Slack.
Yes.
Thank you, Ryan. Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
Thank you, Gary. Lise Hoddle.
Yes.
David Knight.
Yes.
And Glenn Drummond.
Yes.
Got everybody? Motion carries.
Much. Thanks, Habitat. We'll see you again sometime. But good luck with completing this guy, and hope you find some happy buyers or tenants for the project. So, thanks for your efforts, and we'll be talking frequently and often.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next item is our item 7D. This is a public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 23, series 2020. Ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, amending the Basalt Municipal Code to repeal and replace Article 10, fire restrictions under Chapter 7, Health, Sanitation, and Animals. Chief Greg Knott.
Actually, Mayor, just a point on the agenda, we missed 7C, and we have applicants that are on the line.
I was hoping Clay went home, but I guess he's still there. Okay.
He might have dropped off. I don't see his name there anymore, so.
So, Chief, we're gonna have to hold off for a minute. We got Clay Crossley. We can't keep this man waiting. He'll tell us Sunday here in a minute. That's longer. Okay, so excuse me, we gotta go to item 7C. That's public hearing, first reading ordinance number 24, series of 2020, an ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, granting an extension of vested rights for the Basalt Mini Storage Expansion Project in Basalt, Colorado. James, why don't you introduce the item?
Okay, thank you. Let me share my screen real quick here. This is a public hearing and first reading of an ordinance, as the mayor indicated, that would approve of a one-year extension of vested rights on the Basalt Mini Storage Expansion. As background, the applicant South Fork LLC and North Fork LLC received approval in 2017 to expand the Basalt Mini Storage by adding 4 buildings of self-storage. Here on the site plan, this is the existing Basalt Mini Storage. This is Southside Drive coming down towards the high school. And this is the location of the first building that was built. And as I indicated, there were 4 buildings that were part of the approvals. They received granted vested rights and contractual phasing, and specifically, it was in the letter of request that was part of your packet. The applicant was required to provide a building permit within 1 year of the 2017 approval on the first building. And then the applicants did that and constructed the first building, which is located where my cursor is. And then they were required by the 2017 ordinance to get a building permit on the second building within 2.5 years of first getting the permit on the first building of mini storage. And so that requires the applicant to get a building permit on the second building before January 12th of 2021, so this coming January. The approvals required all 4 buildings to be built in a certain time period, 9.5 years. And the applicant requests a 1-year extension of vested rights so that the building permit on the second building wouldn't be required to be obtained until January 12th of 2022, so a year pushback on that. The applicant's primary reason for the request in reduction in the vested rights is for a reduction in demand due to COVID, and the applicant can speak more to that as part of his comments. The draft ordinance that you have in your packet would approve of the applicant's request for an extension of vested rights for a year. It also applies the updated sustainable building regulations as well as the wildfire protection regulations that were enacted since the 2017 approvals. There's also a condition that's included in the draft ordinance that would require the applicant to retrofit the first building that was built already with window film that would reduce the light transmission by 50% for the clear story windows that are up on the upper floor. We had some complaints after the building was built about the light transmission coming out of that, so we think as staff that would help kind of reduce that issue. And then the condition also requires the remaining 3 buildings to also implement that film on the clear story windows. So this evening, staff would suggest taking applicant comments, taking public comments as it is a public hearing, and then providing council discussion. If you're comfortable with the ordinance and the conditions, you could approve it on first reading and set and continue the public hearing and second reading for November 10th. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen. And we have Clay Crossland here this evening, as well as J. Ray Barlow, representing the applicant group.
Welcome, Clay. Would you like to address the council and make any comments?
Well, Clay, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Clay. You got to turn your mic on.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
For the record, I'm Clay Crossland, managing partner for North Fork and South Fork LLC. Thanks for hearing this review or this request for a 1-year extension of vested rights. The only thing that I would add to James's introduction is that during phase 1, we overcame a number of hardships. First of all, the approval document required a number of documents that had to be drafted and approved by the town. And as we all know, we were in a construction period where everybody was maxed out. It was a challenge to get our attorneys to draft the documents, to get the town to review the documents. It went on for an extended period of time, and in fact, the town granted an extension to complete those documents. Once we did that, the approval that we obtained for the 4 buildings required an extensive amount of upfront utility expansion. In other words, the approval required us to completely loop the water system, which was over 1,000 feet. And in doing that, together with other utilities, we got off to a very slow start in our construction for the Phase 1 building. We finally overcame that. Another thing we had to do was build a road that loop for the fire department to meet their requirement to serve all 4 buildings, not just one. So once we did that, we finally obtained approval, or we finally got CO in July of last year. Our plan was to immediately break ground in the spring of this year. Of course, what happened then was the COVID-19 virus came about right when we would have wanted to start building. We became nervous, our bank became nervous. We decided not to start. We were waiting to see what developments would occur, and here we are today. Even if we had decided to start, we've lost the major part of this building season. So simply, we're here to request a 1-year extension. Here we are.
All right, thank you. Mr. Barlow, you have any comments for the council before we move on? Hearing none. Gary Taylor.
Oh, I'm here. I'm actually here.
Did we get dropped?
Stop.
Lost my little thing.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID. Enter your participant ID followed by pound. Other, please enter the meeting password followed by You are in the meeting now. There are 16 participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded.
I would concur with that as well.
So, we dropped the Zoom call right when J. Ray, was just saying, I'm here, but he didn't make any comments. So that's what we have to rewind to.
Susan, can you hear?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
Okay, you can resume.
So all I was saying is that I concur with Clay. The construction environment was challenging. We experienced numerous delays on another project. We just finished that in the town of Basalt, probably 2 months after we had anticipated. And so it has been challenging, not with just personnel and managing people on site, but supply chains and securing materials and moving forward in any sort of timely fashion. So it's been quite a challenge, not just on a local basis. It's nationally. Again, securing materials and equipment have been problematic for us.
No doubt. Gary, did you have a question of the applicant or James?
I did. I said, I appreciate the comments of, tough construction climate, but, for me, really, truly, let's get it right for this extension. And I believe like that light pollution thing should be on all sides, not just one side of the whatever you're calling those things.
Windows.
Clear story windows.
Clear story, yeah.
Yeah. I just believe that we should do the whole thing. I'm totally okay with extending it for 1 year, but I definitely, I want to do at least the whole thing, all those windows. So I was hoping to get the rest of the council to go along with that, but being okay with the 1 year thing.
And Clay can clarify. I wasn't involved in the original design, but I think the Clara story was actually
part of the design to make the building fit in as far as, you know, a historic or, you know, a barn-like shape. So it's an unintended consequence, and I think it's a very simple solution to solve that going forwards and backwards.
I guess I'm a little confused as to Gary's comment.
Well,
We have
Let
agreed.
me clarify. I think his impression is that you would just put this optical film on the windows that face the south side. I think his request is that you apply that shading film around the entire clear story window.
Yes,
Gary?
that's it.
In other words, on both sides of the building. Is that?
Gary, why don't
Yes.
you?
That's all I'm asking.
Okay. Well, I mean, may I hear the rest of the comments?
Sure, let's, any other comments, questions? So Glenn and then Elise.
So I mean, to what Gary said, like, we do have a dark night skies ordinance, and that could be considered light pollution. I'm behind him on that.
Okay. David, or no, Elise, I think was up.
Actually, David can go because I'm still trying to, I forgot what I was going to ask.
I didn't have any questions there.
David got caught in an Austin bit there. He was scratching his ear. I think I got him.
Oh, I remember. Okay, I remember.
Do you remember?
I remember.
Okay.
So I just want to understand that if we grant this extension of vested rights, you're still going to be evaluating whether there's a market for additional buildings at some future time. It sounds like from what I'm reading here. Is that correct?
Well, given the events of the last 12 months, I'm only being prudent in protecting the interest of my partners and also addressing the concerns of my banks and so forth. It's our intention to proceed as fast as possible. There's no reason to wait. I hope to be under construction next year early.
Well, I'm partly asking that question because it's a lead-in. I'm going to ask about the dirt piles. I have friends that live across the street, so I'm kind of personally aware of the dirt piles. And I understand that you are meeting the height requirements, but it's stated here that you're going to be using the topsoil for landscaping with the additional buildings. My concern is if the additional buildings don't happen, are we just going to have big dirt piles there?
Well, I just don't see that happening. And the dirt piles that are there are not unique. I mean, any construction site's going to have this type of construction piles. You look around at Willis, the Roaring Fork Roaring Fork Club, which just did a huge expansion, had all kinds of dirt piles around. It's in our interest to get rid of the dirt piles as soon as possible.
Well, then we're on the same page.
Good. Any further questions for the applicant or James? Hearing none, is there a motion?
And Mayor, just a reminder again that we have a public hearing on this.
Correct. So let's do the public hearing first then. We will open the public hearing at 8:29 p.m. and Susan will provide instructions for calling in.
Okay. If you could email planning@basalt.net or text 970-987-7010 with your name and your phone number, and we'll give you a call. I went ahead and started the clock, and we didn't receive any questions before the meeting or any other requests to speak on the item. like we did on Stats Mill. So, let me just double check my emails. So I didn't receive any emails and we didn't receive any text that anybody wanted to speak for this item.
Okay, then with that, I'll declare the public hearing closed at 8:31 p.m. Gary Tenenbaum had his hand up, so Gary, did you ask a question or make a comment?
No, I just make a motion to approve on first reading, set the second reading. What was the date?
November 10th.
And you're continuing and setting the public hearing.
In continuing and setting the public hearing for November 10th, with the addition of film, plastic, whatever you call it, on the entire upper window for all the buildings.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded. Pam, please call the roll.
Okay, let's begin with Glenn Drummond,
No.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
Bill Infante,
Yes.
Gary Tenenbaum,
Yes.
Elise Hoddle.
Yes.
Thank you, Elise. Bill Kane
Yes.
and David Knight.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
Okay, thank you. Clay, we'll see you, your smiling face again on November 10th.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
We are now on to item 7D. So, both the chief is, there he is. So I will reread this. This is item 7D, public hearing and second reading for ordinance 23, series of 2020. An ordinance of the town council of the town of Basalt, Colorado, amending the Basalt Municipal Code to repeal and replace Article 10, fire restrictions under Chapter 7, health, sanitation, and animals. Greg Knott, Chief of Police.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. We last met on October 13th for first reading. Tonight is a public hearing and second reading of the ordinance. There's been no revisions, additions to the ordinance that was presented to you on October 13th. So I'm here for questions and to the public hearing. No other presentation for you, sir.
Great, thank you. Could I ask just a kind of interesting question? We went to stage 2, then it snowed 8 inches. What actually happened there?
Yeah, so
go to stage 2 and then it snowed, or?
Yeah, Pitkin County went into stage 2. We're still in stage 2 in Pitkin County. Eagle County is still in stage 1. Okay. On the day that Pitkin went to stage 2, there was a red flag warning, which bumped up Eagle County's restrictions that day. But we are, even with the snow, we're still under fire restrictions.
Okay, interesting deal. Thank you. Questions, comments of council? Hearing none, I will open, I better have this right, and open the public hearing, Susan. The second reading. I think I got it this time. So I will open the public hearing at 8:35 p.m.
Okay, if you would like to comment during the public hearing, please email planning@basalt.net or text 970-987-7010 with your name and your phone number, and we'll give you a call. Again, we didn't receive any questions before the public meeting or any emails on this either.
Do you want to wait, or shall we proceed?
No, the clock's going, so we're still gonna proceed for another 45 seconds.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, our clock went off, and I didn't receive any emails, and we didn't get any text for people wanting to speak on this item.
Thank you very much. So the public hearing will close at 8:37, and I would ask for a motion to approve the ordinance.
Mayor, I move the town council adopt ordinance number 23, series of 2020 on second reading.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Pam, please call the roll.
Okay, let's begin with Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
Thank you. Ryan Slack,
Yes.
Bill Kane,
Yes.
Elise Huddle,
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
Glenn Drummond,
Glenn, are you on there?
there he is. Thank you, Glenn. And Bill Infante.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
It's going to work better, so appreciate your efforts.
Oh, no. No, 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 no.
You better yell at Brian, I think he's. That's what, 3 tonight?
4. This is 4, right? Oh.
Welcome to Zoom. Enter your meeting ID followed by enter your participant. Please enter the meeting password followed. You are in the meeting now. There are 14 participants in the meeting. This meeting is being recorded.
The voices of the public when they call in via that route. So is there another solution? Yeah. I mean, we're gonna have to investigate that because this is extremely aggravating, as I'm sure you all feel. So.
Is it a voice modem? Is that what keeps clunking out?
It was. So all the phone lines, phone lines go over the internet, but the latest thing they did was check this firewall, and they're like, oh, let's fix this issue. This could be it. Apparently, it's not.
Well, the other
what they did before was check. Shoot, what was the first thing they did? I just had it in my head and I lost it.
Well, the second thing they did was that, and I don't know if you guys were communicating while I was off, but the backup, the timing of our computer server backup was during the meeting, so they moved it in the early morning or something so that we wouldn't have that issue. And then the other one was there was a lousy connection to the phone, and we fixed that one. Was there something else, Pam?
Those are the main ones that they've tried so far. They said something about, that's why Chantry was here tonight, was checking packets, should a call drop, and he was not here when any of the calls dropped, so.
Sounds like it's time for copper wire.
Tried and true.
Smoke signal.
We'll double down on it because it's not.
Could we try a cell phone?
Potentially. We have an analog line here that I asked if we could try that. I'm not sure where we are with that or not, but we have one analog line left.
So we can try one thing at a time, we just have to do a process of elimination.
Yeah.
Are we back up yet?
Yeah, we're back up, Susan, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we had a motion and a second for resolution 37. And you were about to make a presentation on our schedule, Ryan and Jeff. Face coverings.
Yeah, so this is a continuation of our face covering resolution that we had initially passed back in May. We were doing month-long extensions initially, and then as of the last extension we did, we went for 3 months. It just seemed that this was going to be something that was going to be with us for some time, and we are proposing a similar extension now, so that would essentially take us through January, I believe it is, and then we could bring it back to you all. If there are other suggestions, I mean, I think going back to the month is just too short. Once again, we had proposed at one point in time just keeping it in place until such time the council rescinded it, but we haven't had comment from folks that are opposed to this after the initial issues we had. I think the science is catching up, and there's pretty good evidence that wearing a mask is going to protect people and at the end of the day save lives. And so that's basically it in a nutshell. I don't believe we've changed anything else at this point in time. Jeff, any other comment from you?
I think I covered it.
Ryan, does our ordinance differ radically from the governor's ordinance?
No. The state's ordinance, or excuse me, the state's public health order that requires face coverings is for kids. Kids 10 and under are not required to wear it, whereas we have it, under 2 years old. So not sure what the distinction was on that one, but the thing that we have been doing is essentially mirroring what we're seeing in the valley. So I think that's kind of a more important point. Is what are our neighbors doing here? I'm not as much concerned as what's happening in Denver as the Roaring Fork Valley. So I would suggest we keep that one in. We know that even younger children who are wearing masks at school all day long at this point can also spread the virus.
I was going to, sorry.
That's David's next.
Yeah, I think we should keep it in line so that the kids in school, if that's in fact one of the differences, so they're wearing masks by ordinance and by, order of the school district policy. That makes a lot of sense.
Jeff, did you want to make a comment?
No, I think Ryan covered it. Thanks.
Okay, great. The only thought I would have about this is that, you know, the curve is not going in the right direction right now, and we're only at Halloween, not even at Halloween. So I definitely will vote for this, but I wonder if we shouldn't keep a close eye on how we're doing relative to the meter. And if we see significant change of circumstance, then I think we ought to give thought to whether we want to make face coverings mandatory in the central business districts of both Willits and the downtown. I know Aspen's gone to that system. It was pretty comforting to see that this summer, especially when we had so many people. You know, maybe it's not an issue because of our you know, density at one time, but I think it's something to have in our back pocket and be thinking about and revisit if we have a serious decline in the condition here. So, you know, we've got to get the word out and make sure that people do the fundamentals here: social distance, wash hands. We got a winter coming on here that's going to be pretty challenging. So that's my only thought about it. Elise?
I think actually that Glenn had his hand up first.
That's very considerate. Go ahead, Glenn.
Thanks, Elise. My only question was, you know, private gatherings were cut down to 10 with the, you know, limit of 2 different families. How does this apply to restaurants and bars?
Are you talking about this as far as the gatherings go? How does that apply to restaurants?
It has less to do with our mask ordinance. I'm sorry, totally a little off subject, but I'm just curious, like, when we're talking about this all-encompassing, how do we control this? I'm a little confused even from the city. Like, privately you can have 10 people, but in a bar you can have 75 or 100. I'm just confused.
Yeah, you know, I think, Glenn, the issue there is that, you know, the evidence that we're getting through contact tracing, you know, throughout the state, probably throughout the nation for that matter, is that people getting together in homes where, you know, they're meeting with you know, mixed families and things like that, we're seeing an uptick in spread. And that's not to say that you can't get it while in a business, but I think the idea in the business is that you're walking in with a mask, you're getting up to use the restroom, you're in a mask, and when you're sitting at a table where there are limitations on the size of that table, you're then socially distanced from the next group. So I think they're effectively mimicking that, you know, that setup in a way. But of course, in a home, if people, you know, I'm thinking that people are showing up without the mask, never putting it on, probably hugging, sharing, you know, food, and, you know, it's just, those numbers can exceed what they've considered to be safe in those public environments. So that's the best explanation I can offer for now.
Yeah, and I would just briefly add to that the way that CDPHE order is structured, it's that person limitation applies to public and private gatherings, but not to the separate, distinct types of functions or things that are regulated by the order that would have their own specific provisions, like restaurants, critical business functions, the governmental functions, things like that. So it's, as Ryan said, it applies to those public and private gatherings as a use category.
Further questions, discussion? Elise?
So I know I was the one who originally was against having an indefinite ordinance, but I'm wondering whether it makes sense to revisit this conversation at such time as the statewide ordinance is revoked. Want to just throw that idea out there and see what people thought. So maintain our ordinance as is with the current provisions for children and everything. Don't change any of that, but just in terms of us revisiting it, instead of in 3 months, we revisit when the state ordinance is revoked. Or not.
Yeah. It just feels a little amorphous and a little bit vague. It just feels like if we stipulate a date that, I don't know. I could certainly go either way, but the date certain feels clearer to me.
Okay. I'm good with that.
We could, along those lines, Elise, my guess is, we're anticipating to see a winter with, increased infections, and hopefully we get that under control. But it's also potential that, you all could consider sort of extending it for, 6 months versus 3 months, which kind of, that would bring us February, March, April, kind of to the 1 year point, essentially, of when we first saw this. And this is a resolution. I know we call it the ordinance, but it's a resolution, so it's much easier for us to, quickly respond and do that at a single meeting. If in fact, by some miracle, we felt like we didn't need to have the mask ordinance within that 6-month period, or the mask resolution within that 6-month period. If you're looking to extend the time.
Yeah. David.
I feel like the quarterly conversation is appropriate. It's just a good point to touch base. It's just a valuable conversation, I think, and let's just keep addressing quarterly. That was
Is that a
my,
motion?
Yeah, so Mayor, I move that the town council adopt resolution number 37, series of 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded, it's a resolution, so this is a quiz. Is this a roll call or is this a voice vote? Roll call.
Roll call.
That was the correct answer. Roll call is the answer. Go ahead, Pam.
Okay, sure. Let's begin with Gary Tenenbaum.
Yes.
Bill Infante.
Yes.
Thank you. Elise Hoddle.
Yes.
Thank you. Ryan Slack.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bill King.
Yes.
Thank you. David Knight.
Yes.
And thank you. And Glenn Drummond.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, the next order of business was scheduled to be an executive session to discuss candidates for P&Z appointment, but I understand Jeff may have some second thoughts about how we want to go about that.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I was out of the office last week and didn't have a chance to fully review and advise on this issue, but under the open meetings law, appointments to fill vacancies to local public bodies should be done in open session. So rather than have this executive session, what I would recommend is council just take up the discussion of the appointments to P&Z at its next meeting, or perhaps a work session prior to that meeting to discuss the candidates. I can also work with staff about options to kind of facilitate that discussion. As I know, sometimes this discussion of appointments like that can be challenging one just to have in public, but it is a discussion that should be done in public, and the appointments, of course, should be a formal action in a public meeting. So that would be my recommendation, is to not take this up tonight, but to push that to a future meeting.
Yeah,
sounds great. Why we can't?
Yeah, I think that
we want to discuss?
Without the public, without the executive session, it becomes awkward to talk about the strong points and weak points of individual candidate. I don't think that's fair to any individuals to have an open debate on their, kind of individual merits. I wonder if there isn't a process that we could consider whereby individual counselors could virtually kind of fill out a little slip of paper and write down your vote for appointment to council. I assume there's only one position open right now, or are there none?
No, I would,
My understanding is there's two vacancies.
So basically, what we could do is either call the town manager or call Susan, and everybody, you know, have the sanctity of the private voting booth here, and essentially vote in our, I mean, we could have an open discussion, but the actual voting, I don't know if that's a really cricket to have that like a totally open process. That doesn't feel fair to the candidates or to the counselors to me, so I don't know.
We have to do that.
Yeah, I guess I don't understand how that's different than
We're all
an executive
adults.
session.
Let's just go, let's just get this done.
I have no problem. So for the purposes of tonight, because I think that this was noticed as an executive session and not as a discussion item in front of council, that it would, there's not an expectation that it would be a discussion in open meeting, so I would just suggest that it be taken up at the next meeting.
Okay.
And if there's and I'll review with staff perhaps a way to indicate ranking or preferences of candidates between now and that next meeting.
What if we did a simple little roll call? Please don't keep this going, hey, let's pick them right now.
How about a secret ballot? Is that too,
well, the discussion of the appointments to fill the vacancies should really take place in the open meeting, and
Okay.
of course, the action to do that needs to take place in the open meeting.
all right.
and just to kind of clarify, we'll provide to you some more background. We have 2 full P and Z positions, and you know there's an opportunity potentially to do alternates. Our practice is just to do 1 alternate position, but we'll give you more information on that and not. But that was one of the things we were going to talk about in executive session.
And so, with that, I don't think that there needs to be any specific action on this item 8A, and otherwise we're at the end of the agenda, and staff can place this item on the next council meeting agenda for discussion and consideration.
So we can pick 2. I mean, is that basically what we're going to be asked to do?
1 alternate.
2, and then if we, you know, just a discussion about the alternate position. I think our recommendation would be to just pick 2 at this time.
All right. Do we need yard signs or any kind of campaign material here? No. We won't do
I mean, I can tell you the 2 I'm behind.
All right, guys, I think we've reached the end of our agenda, so thanks, everyone. We got it done before 9. This was supposed to be a short meeting, which it kind of was, I guess. So thanks, everyone. I really appreciated the discussion on everything, and we'll be around on the campus. So keep an eye out for our public service announcement on COVID, which is being taped. We have Karen Koneman and Heath Harmon are going to be here, and we're doing a little public service announcement to get everybody to knuckle down. So that's an eye out for that. So if there are no further comments, questions, we're going to be adjourned. Thanks, guys.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, y'all.